So this is a hand from Poker After Dark between Jungleman and Matt Berkey that demonstrates the power of small bet sizes against players who don't know how to prepare against them. So Jungleman wakes up with aces and raises to 1500 from under the gun at a 300-600 game with a $300 ante, effectively giving the big blind the pot odds to call as if facing a min raise, and Matt Berkey decides to call with Jack-5 offsuit. So this is a simplified pre-flop solution of what your big blind defense range should look like when you are facing a min raise from about a 19% opener, which is what we expect Jungleman to be from this position. As you can see here, Jack-5 offsuit isn't anywhere close to being a profitable defense, especially when you consider that the pre-flop raiser is both under the gun and Jungleman. There is some kind of argument for defending a hand like Jack-5 offsuit if you think that you can significantly outplay your opponent post-flop, but I just don't think that Jungleman is the kind of guy who you want to be trying to be outplaying, especially when he has more experience playing the solver-based style that we'll see him implement on future streets. The flop comes Queen 4-3 Rainbow, and this is a flop texture where under the gun versus big blind, I expect Jungleman to bet his entire range. If you look in PO and see what kind of advantages that Jungleman has over Matt Berkey's probably very loose defense range, which I've approximated here, you'll see that PO prefers betting 100% on the flop, alternating between large sizes and small sizes. Now, this might be a spot where Jungleman only bets 1/3 on the flop and never goes for a mixed sizing against Berkey, but as you can see from this, there's almost no combinations of checks on the flop. One of the main reasons why this is true is if you bet 1/3 on the flop, your opponent is going to have so much garbage in his pre-flop defense range that he's going to be forced to fold about 50% of the time against your tight under the gun range. Here, against a 1/3 bet on the flop, your opponent really should be folding about 20 to 25% of the time, but as you can see here, he has to fold nearly double because he has so much air in his range. So this is one of the main ways that you can punish really loose players post-flop, is by betting really small on the flop, because then they won't be able to make minimum defense frequencies in order to prevent you from auto-profiting with a small bet. Here, facing a down bet from Jungleman, Matt Berkey calls with Jack high and a backdoor straight draw, which in my mind kind of feels like burning money. Here, if we look at the EV differential between calling and folding, we'll see that Jack-5 is losing about $260 to $270 when you call, and that's pretty much as bad as it gets. Only a hand like Jack-2 suited, which is going to be worth negative $360 as a call, is going to be significantly worse, and pretty much there's no real reason to defend a hand this week when you have a lot more ace-high or king-high hands with backdoors which are going to be better flop floats.
So Kuhn doesn't call, but Berkey does.
After Berkey Jack calls the flop down bet with Jack-5, which is pretty loose, the turn comes a 5, which is actually the best card for Berkey to lead on, because he's probably the only player who can have 7-6, 7-6 suited, and he might even have ace-2 offsuit, while Jungleman isn't going to be raising any of those hands from under the gun. Here on the turn, when the nuts advantage swings into Berkey's favor, arguably he can have 16 combinations of 7-6, while Jungleman probably only has 1 to 4 combinations of 7-6 and ace-2 suited. Now with that nut advantage, Berkey is allowed to lead, and because he has a distinct nut advantage here, he's actually allowed to lead nearly 50% of the time. If we use the hotness comparison, we can see that the 5 is the best card to lead because it improves our nuts advantages, followed by 4s, which we probably have more of with a loose pre-flop defense range than our opponent has with a tight under-the-gun opening range. Of the hands we do lead, however, Jack-5 is not one of them. If we look at the EV difference between betting and checking, we can see that checking is obviously preferable, but in the context of a larger strategy, the hands that we want to be leading here are going to be 7-6, the hands that block 6s and 7s, which in turn can also draw to a straight. We should be betting some of our top pair decent kicker, and we should also be betting some of our weaker combo draws for balance. This is kind of a difficult range to juggle, so I don't blame Berkey for misappropriating Jack-5 as a bet instead of a check. That is not actually a huge mistake, even though it's probably going to be better to play a 5 as a check fold. As you can see, that's what Pio prefers to do with all of its 5X's with no redraw type hands. But I do like that Berkey recognized that this is the optimal turn to lead. Jungle doesn't really have that difficult of a decision ahead of him. He can pretty much just look at his hand, see if it has enough showdown value to continue, and then call if he has it, and then fold when he doesn't. And because he's got pocket aces, he just goes ahead and calls, especially because he has outs to improve by the river. Facing a turn lead, Jungleman basically should just call anytime he has a pair or a draw to the effective nuts. Here, this strategy folds 8s, but if we compare the EVs between calling and folding, we'll see that 8s is pretty close, 9s is pretty close. Basically, all of these mediocre pairs are very neutral calls. Anything that has a pair and a redraw is profitable. Anything that has a draw to the nuts is profitable. And all of these hands that are no pair, no draw are just going to be very easy mucks. So as you can see here, this is going to be a very easy strategy to play, and it's very likely that you're going to be able to recognize this over the board. So regardless if this turn lead is theoretically correct, you're still not going to have that many problems facing it in practice. The river queen is where things get more interesting, because by the river, Matt should be the only player who has Queen 5 suited, Queen 4 suited, 7-6, so technically he has more combinations of the effective nuts and is quote-unquote allowed to bet liberally on the river with a wide variety of thin value bets and bluffs. In fact, if Matt bets here on the river, Pio recommends that Jungle folds pocket aces and calls with pocket 7s, which makes a lot of sense because pocket 7s blocks 7-6 suited, but pocket aces blocks no value hands. As played, Berkey checks the river, and there's not much reason to go for thin value on a board where Berkey might have more combinations of nuts and is going for some kind of crazy check-raise river setups. So, as you can see, Piosolver even likes checking back Queen 8 suited and some Queen 9 suited by the river. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it.